For this exercise, you're going to make a color mixing chart. And I used these 8 colors only to mix all of this that's in the chart. So this should hopefully give you an understanding that even if you have a really basic set of colors, that you can create a very wide variety of specific colors for whatever it is that you need. And you'll notice whenever you're making it that the plain, pure colors from the palette are diagonally in the center, and then all of the mixing goes out from there. And you might notice as well that some color mixes get you similar results. Sometimes it's very distinct and you only mix certain colors to get a certain result, but sometimes you can go about getting a certain color a different way, and sometimes one is better than the other for getting a certain shade of that color that you're looking for. Particularly, this is especially important when it comes to browns. Certainly, you can have a warm brown or a cool brown, something that is tinted with a certain color or a certain shade, and that can be really important sometimes whenever you're making your own work. We're starting off with an 8.5 inch by 8.5 inch square, and we're going to mark this into some boxes in a grid. Looking at our palette, we have 8 colors. So because this is 8.5 inch, we're going to mark every inch, and then we'll have a small section for labeling at the end. You need to place your ruler so that way the end of the ruler is flush with the edge of your paper, and you're going to make a small mark up at each inch. So these are just very small marks. I'm not trying to draw the whole line, and the reason for this is we want to make sure that our lines in our grid are even. After that, I move my ruler down a little bit. And again, I need to make sure that the end of my ruler is right at the end of my paper. And I'm going to make those same marks every inch. So you'll see the very last one is a little skinny, but that is exactly what we want. Now I'm going to turn my page, line up those marks, and draw straight across. And I'm going to do that for each line. Line up those marks and draw straight across. The reason we want to do this is make sure that our grid is very consistent. We don't have boxes that are skinnier or fatter than others. They're all the same size, and making sure as well that we have enough room on the page for all of the information that we need. And since we have 8 colors, we need 8 boxes, 1 for each color. Please make sure that your 1/2 inch section is up at the top here. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I need to make sure that my ruler is flush with the end of my paper, and I'm going to make a mark each inch. Again, these are just very small marks going up, and then I slide my ruler down towards myself. I'm not turning the paper at all. So the paper stays, your ruler moves down. That's it. Make sure that that ruler is lined up again, and I'll go ahead and make those marks every 1 inch. Now that I have those marks, I'm going to turn my paper, line up my ruler, and make my marks across again. And it's okay if you accidentally miss one of the marks as long as it's pretty good. We're just making this as a practice chart, but measuring and going through this process is going to make sure that things are pretty even. Now we have an 8 inch by 8 inch grid here with a 1/2 inch strip on the top and on the side. So you want for the 1/2 inch strip to be on the top here and on the left side. And the next thing we're going to do is label on the skinny sides what all of our colors are. Very clearly, we're going to label these in rainbow order from left to right. Our first one will be red. Next is orange, then yellow, green, blue, purple. The next one will be brown and black. And you're going to turn your paper and do the same thing, again, from right to left. Start with red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, and black. I have red to black on the top, and then red to black on the left side. We are now going to start filling out the chart. You need to make sure that you have some water your paints and your paintbrush. And also plenty of paper towels is a good idea as well. The first part that we're gonna do is just the plain colors themselves. So how this chart works is you need to find where the two colors meet, and then that's the square that you will complete. So here in this first column we have red, and the very bottom row we have red. So those colors don't actually get mixed together, they're the same. I'm going to take my brush and get a puddle going in my palette. Remember that with watercolor we're not trying to pick up any actual pigment, but we're looking for just pretty much colored water, which is literally in the name. Now that I've picked up my color, again I've got red in the first column, red in the bottom row, so that meets right here. And what I want to do, as I'm painting, I want to make sure that I am very careful to stay inside that square. And it's also a good idea to actually leave a little bit of room and not go all the way to where the pencil is. The reason for that being that we're going to keep working on this. And as you noticed when we did the wet on wet technique, if you have watercolor that's not quite dry yet and you put another color right next to it, it's going to bleed into that other area. And we want to make sure that these colors stay inside their little squares. So we don't want for them to bleed together. So I'm leaving a little bit of room and not touching that pencil mark. Next we have orange, and that's the second column and this very bottom row. So where those meet up is this square right here, so we're starting to go at a diagonal, and I'm going to get some water, fresh clean water, into the orange and get my puddle so that way I can pick up just the liquid there. Again, second column and this second to last row, they meet up right here. And now with the orange, I'm going to very carefully fill in this square. And again, try to leave myself a little bit of space and not go over too close to the pencil. Try to stay inside that square. If it looks like it's a little too light, I can always pick up a little bit more color and add a little bit more. So that way it's a little more bright. Remember that you should clean your brushes between each color, clean them very well, and check them on your paper towel so that way you know that there's no more color coming off of it. So this one still has a little bit of orange, so I want to go back and try one more time. There we go, now it's clear. I'm going to get a little bit of water in my yellow because that's my next color. Yellow is the third column and this third from the bottom row. And where those meet, right here, is the box that I am going to paint. Going back with a little bit more of the paint to make it a little darker. Especially with these lighter colors, sometimes it takes a second layer for them to be a little bit stronger. You'll find that especially black and brown can be very strong in their pigmentation, so you don't need as much of them to get a nice strong color. I'm going to get a little bit of water in my green. I have green here on this fourth column and the fourth row from the bottom. And where they meet here is where I will paint green. If you need to turn your paper so that way you will get right up at the edge or close to the edge, that is perfectly fine. In fact, I recommend it. I also want to try and make sure that this is as smooth as possible. I want it to be a nice flat wash, so I'm trying to make sure that there's no spots that are much darker or lighter. I'm just very lightly moving that pigment around with my brush. Next is blue. So I got some water in my palette for my blue, and I find the column and in the row, and where they meet is where that will get painted. Next is purple. So I find purple at the top and on the side, and then move until my fingers meet. And this is where that purple is going to go. Now the purple especially can get very, very dark, like you can see here. So what I probably would want to do is have more water and less actual pigment on my brush. So that way it doesn't look like black. We do want to see the difference between these different colors. So even though that ended up being a a little too dark at the beginning, I was able to use just water on my brush to pick up some of that pigment and make it a little bit lighter. Next is brown. This is another one that can be very strong of a pigment. I find brown at the top and on the side, and they meet here in this box. Go ahead and fill that in. Finally, we have black. Find it at the top, find it on the left, and it goes in this box. And this one, definitely make sure that you only pick up a little bit of that color, because black is very, very strong pigment, especially when we start mixing the colors. It will overpower things. And there we have all of those pure colors. So it should be going in a diagonal up and to the right across your paper. And now we're going to start mixing those colors. So again, you want to be very careful. You're not working on a square that's right next to something that you've just worked on. So I would probably want to start down here since the red is getting pretty close to dry. I can see that the orange and yellow and green are still fairly wet, and definitely these ones back here are going to be a little bit more wet. So I don't want to try and work on the ones that are right next to it. The next one for the red to mix with is orange here. And one thing you'll notice as well is, so we have red that meets with orange here, and we also have red that meets with orange here. So for each of these mixed colors, you're going to be doing 2 squares. So you want to make sure that you mix up a little bit extra so that you have enough for 2 squares. And you can always mix a little bit more if you need it, but you don't want to mix so much that you end up wasting your paint. If you have a tray like this, you're able to mix your paints up here at the top, but you need to be very careful to make sure to clean and dry it before you close it. If it's still wet up there, then when you go to close it, it's going to fall into your paint wells down here, and that will really mess up your colors. So try to make sure that you are keeping these colors nice and clean, so that way you have pure colors to work with. If you have a plate or wax paper even to use, that's a very good thing to work on top of. What I'm going to use is this page protector. So this is what you would put in a binder and put paper inside, but it's a nice clean plasticky surface that I can use to mix my paints on and clean very easily. Because my tabletop is green, I'm going to have white paper underneath, so that way I can see what the colors look like as I'm mixing them. I also need to make sure that I have plenty of paper towels, so that way I can make sure to check and see that my brush is very clean, and also later when I wipe off the colors as I'm working. First, I'm going to start with the red and orange mixture, which is right here, and then red and orange mixture here. So I'm going to take a little bit of the red over here on my makeshift palette, and if I add a little bit of water to it, it kind of stays in one place a little bit better. I need to make sure that I completely clean off my brush and get some of the orange, and I want to try and mix that together. You should be able to notice the color change a little bit, and it might be a little more difficult to see on camera, but let's see what it looks like when we put this on the paper. You'll notice that it is definitely different. It's not quite red, it's not quite orange. This is a red-orange. It feels like maybe it does need a little bit more orange, so I'll mix a little bit more in there and go over that one more time. That's a little better. Then I go for my red at the top, orange at the bottom. Those meet here. And again, it's good to leave a little bit of room, not go quite all the way to the edge, if you can help it. Once I have those 2, I don't need this color anymore, so I can go ahead and wipe that up. I want to make sure to wipe that with a clean part of the paper towel, and make sure to check with another clean part of the paper towel to make sure there's no more color, because that will end up mixing into my next part if I'm not careful. Because these are very wet, I don't want to go right next to them either. So I'm going to kind of jump up here a little bit. So this would be orange mixed with yellow. And here's yellow and orange there. So orange and yellow to here, yellow and orange to here. So it'll be these 2 squares there. So I need to pick up my 2 colors. Orange, clean my brush off between, pick up some yellow, and I like to just slightly touch it off to the side. What that does is it lets me control how much the colors mix. And here I can see that that's becoming a nice like little pumpkin-y orange. Again, orange and yellow, they meet right here. So I'm going to put that there. And then orange and yellow meet right here. So that'll also go in that square. And then I'm going to go ahead and very carefully and neatly fill in those squares on my grid. Again, you want to make sure that it is a nice, even, flat wash like we learned the other day, and it completely fills that square. Now that I've done those 2 squares, I can, again, clean off my palette. I don't want to go right next to that, so jump up here. Green and yellow would meet there, and then yellow and green meet right here. So I'm kind of going up at a diagonal for each of these. I'm going to get a little bit of yellow, clean my brush off completely, get a little bit of the green. Again, I like to mix mine off to the side so that way I can control exactly how much of the colors get mixed together. Again, find green and yellow, and this is where those 2 colors meet. So it'll go in that box, and then yellow and green. And this is where those 2 boxes meet. I like to double check and make sure that I've marked the right square. It's always better to double or even triple check where your colors need to go, because once you've put that color down, you can't pick it up. Clean up my palette now that I have those 2 squares. Make sure that there's no excess color. I don't want to go right next to it, so I'm going to continue going up the diagonal line here. And so this is blue and green. Those meet here, blue and green meet here. I'll pick up a little bit of the green first, clean off my brush, and then pick up a little bit of the blue. Mix off to the side so that way I control just how much of that mixes. Very nice blue-green there. So again, double check, blue and green meet up right here. Blue and green meet up right here. Now that I've got those 2 boxes, clean off my palette, make sure that there is no extra color. It'll be really easier to clean your palette between each color instead of letting the colors kind of sit on your palette, because then once they start to dry, it takes a little bit more effort to clean it up. Get yourself a new piece of paper towel whenever yours gets too dirty. And again, I want to move up this diagonal, and here I need the colors blue and purple. I'll get a little bit of blue and a little bit of the purple. With the purple, make sure that you use only a tiny, tiny bit. It can be incredibly overpowering. Like here, I already think this is way too much purple. So I'm going to pick up a lot of the blue, and again, go over here to the side and just get a little bit at a time until it seems like it's a nice, even blue-violet. Purple and blue meet here, and then purple and blue meet here. And if while I'm painting I look and I see, no, I think I do need a little bit more purple in there, I can always kind of move that color a little bit more. But you should definitely see a difference between the blue, the purple, and the mixed color. Clean off my palette again. And if it's leaving behind plenty of streaks, you can always add a little bit of clean water and then try wiping again. Next, I need brown and purple. Brown and purple. Remembering that my purple is very strong, I'm going to get just a little bit of the purple there. Maybe even add a little bit of extra water to it to make it a little lighter. Clean off my brush completely and get a little bit of the brown. Mix those together. I can see just a hint of the purple in there. Purple and brown here. Clean off my palette. Finally, here on my diagonal, I need brown and black together. Brown and black together. Again, both the brown and especially the black are very strong. So I'm literally going to put the tiniest amount of black and get some brown. It's always better to need to add just a little bit more instead of going too dark too quickly. Remember that adding black to a color makes it a shade. So it will make the color a little bit darker. As we can see here, it's darker than our straight brown. Clean the palette. Now, by the time I've gotten to this end, down here is much more dry. So the paper should be absorbing things pretty decently. As your water gets really murky and gross, you also want to make sure to clean this out every once in a while too. If you notice that your paper is still just really wet and it's taking a long while for that color to soak in and the water to get soaked up, go ahead and wait. Set it off to the side, work on something else, and then come back to it when it's dry. Again, you don't want these colors to bleed into one another, especially for the color chart. We really need to see where those different colors are, so that way later on, if I know, I kind of want this color right here, I really like that for whatever it is that I'm painting, I would be able to tell that that's a mixture of green and blue. So that's the purpose of this project, is to make sure that we know if I want this color precisely, what colors do I need to mix to get to that same color. To finish, you'll need to find which two colors need to be mixed for each box, mix the colors on your palette, and then fill in the 2 boxes for that mixed color. Once you've completed the entire chart, you should take a picture and turn it into Google Classroom.